Okay, we are live on Facebook and YouTube.
So we are, with just a few seconds to go until the show starts. Hello, Facebook and YouTube listeners, viewers.
Thanks for tuning in, or whatever the equivalent is on the internets.
I will try not to cough too much this week. I have cough drops handy.
I have extra ones if you need them.
I took cough medicine.
And you blew your nose.
Here we go.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop.
And you may have noticed, but there's been a surge of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, including on mass Zoom calls for everyone from Black women to white dudes to the LGBTQ community.
And I'm going to move my chair up a little so I appear to be in the same county as you.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Hello.
And
who are you?
I'm Ann Northrop. And Kamala Harris, among her other campaign stops, joined a voter registration drive on RuPaul's Drag Race. We're going to show you that.
This was just when she was running for vice president, of course. Trump tells Christians that if he's elected, they don't have to vote anymore. Very ominous.
Very confusing.
No, it's ominous.
Well, it's confusing. We'll get into that. J.D. Vance's trans ex-friend, Sophia Nelson, has spilled the beans on him.
And Trump is desperately trying to run away from Project 2025, but it remains the blueprint for what he's going to do if he gets into office again.
Not to mention the hiring haul.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The Senate has passed the Kids Online Safety Act, but it's alarming LGBTQ teens because they may get censored off the internet for it.
Elon Musk's trans ex-daughter has hit back at his lies about her transition.
And we record the murders of trans women in Seattle and Florida.
At the Olympics, drag took center stage.
Much to the consternation of a lot of people.
Oh, my.
But creative. And LGBTQ Olympians are shining in Paris.
All right.
We'll give you the latest count.
So, first of all, Kamala Harris put her first ad out, and we have a picture, a screen grab from there, and it did include rainbows. That was encouraging, and we will link to the full thing in our email. But wow, I mean, what a different feeling. I mean, none of this was happening while Biden was the candidate.
Well, don't imply that Biden was anti-LGBTQ.
No, I mean the enthusiasm, the excitement.
Of course.
The excitement, the
things. It's 180 degrees different.
I mean, we were all gonna vote for him, but you've heard that tens of thousands of people are getting on these Zoom calls for Harris. And so what did they do? Black women, Black men, and this week, white dudes for Harris, 200,000 of us. And
before that, white women.
Yes, and they raised over $4 million for campaigns. The white dudes, the white women, 8.5 million, right? The LGBTQ call, organized by the Human Rights Campaign, 20,000 on it. They raised 300,000, but they also got 1,500 volunteers out of that call, and that's very important.
Yes, this is building enthusiasm. It is a lovely acknowledgement of the responsibility of white people to show up for Black people.
Yes.
And that's playing out really nicely and in a kind of fun but serious way that is working terrifically. So, and we're not dancing around that. We're just doing it.
Some of the people on the LGBTQ call: Don Lemon, former soccer star Ashlyn Harris, actress Sophia Bush, Wilson Cruz, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, Linda Carter, and Anise Parker. Everyone is on board, even
Megan Rapinoe.
Yeah, everyone's on board now, even Fred Trump Jr. And, so it is encouraging. It's making us all feel better. Don't take anything for granted out there. This is going to be a long, hard slog.
Heavens no.
Less than 100 days.
But Kamala, it turns out, had recorded something a couple of weeks before this happened, an appearance on RuPaul's Drag Race to get out the vote. So let's see a little of that.
We interrupt this program to bring you a message from an extra special Drag Race viewing party.
Hi, everyone. It's Kamala Harris. Each day, we are seeing our rights and freedoms under attack, including the right of everyone to be who they are, love who they love, openly and with pride. So as we fight back against these attacks, let's all remember, no one is alone. We are all in this together, and your vote is your power. So please make sure your voice is heard this November and register to vote at vote.gov.
Can I get an amen?
Amen. Now on with the show.
And remember, you better vote.
Cheyenne Jackson, Leslie Jones. There was also Jamal Sims, Lance Bass, and
Michelle Visage.
Yes.
Yes.
She, let's go back to the attacks that are happening against Vice President Harris now that she's running for president. This was the week that the right-wing media went after her for being a sex worker for rich black men with whom she traded sexual favors for political power, all because she dated Montel Williams and San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown back in the day when she was single. So it's gotten very ugly, and it's going to get uglier. I think it will backfire.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because she is coming out with humor, and she's laughing off these attacks, and she's picked up Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota's weird. Everybody's using weird now because that worked. I know it's a little overused, but the say it to my face.
It's weird.
Say it to my face. And she's just treating everything with humor. So these attacks are going to roll off her back because she is popular.
She's even popular in the villages.
Yes. Okay. Let's roll that footage. The villages in Florida are notoriously right-wing territory, senior housing, vast, hundreds of thousands of people living there. And we've shown you before with despair, golf carts decorated with Trump posters. This is a golf cart parade for Kamala with hundreds of golf carts parading through the villages with people talking about how they're supporting Kamala. This is a coming out party for Democrats in the villages. I'm just thrilled with this.
When I used to play golf with you, I used to call it missionary work to Republicans.
Golf carts are just standard transportation in the villages. They have a lot of golf courses, but it's not about everyone playing golf.
Right.
Also, that first ad that we showed you a screenshot from with the rainbows has Beyonce's Freedom donated again to Kamala for her use in the campaign. And it's this sense of everybody getting on board, everybody being excited, the energy, the volunteers, the money, all of it. My only fear is, can we keep this up for another 3 months?
Oh, why not?
Well, people talk about, it's such a short period of time. 3 months, we got to sustain this.
People will be starting to vote in September.
And we have the convention coming up in a couple of weeks in August in Chicago.
Last week I talked about how Vice President Harris stumped in Wisconsin, not just for herself, but for all the down ballot Democrats, which is so important. I wasn't sure if U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin was there, but it turns out she opened the rally. There she is, the out lesbian senator who is herself running for re-election. She's a two-term senator. She's running against the far-right Republican multimillionaire Eric Hovde, an anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ candidate who lives mostly in California. The latest polls have Baldwin up 5 to 8 points, but again, nothing can be taken for granted.
Well, she has a great line about him. He does live mostly in Orange County, California. So she gets up at the podium and she says, now in Wisconsin, we have a green county and a brown county. We do not have an orange county.
All right.
So I hope she's going to continue to
Well,
do
so
well
much
there.
of the news this week, we are going to talk about former President Trump, but was about J.D. Vance. He did not just castigate Democrats in 2021 as childless cat ladies with no stake in the future of the country, but proposed giving votes to all children in this country. I think that's a nice idea. Give them the vote. I'd give them the vote from the age of 7, but he wants their parents to cast their votes for them.
Yeah, I don't think he's giving the children votes. He's saying a family with children should have the number of votes that
I say let
they
the
have
kids
children.
vote, and then you'd have, well.
But meanwhile, he wants to tell Ireland, he walked into the middle of their politics and told them not to pass a trans-inclusive hate speech law. Don't do that, he said.
He wants a federal response to prevent women from crossing state lines to obtain abortions. And even if Trump and Vance don't win, so that they can use the Comstock Act to stop the abortion pill from being sent through the mails and everything, anti-abortion groups are going to demand enforcement of the Comstock anyway, and they'd probably get a sympathetic hearing from the Supreme Court, who will say, well, this was a law passed by the Congress in 70-something. And of course, they don't respect the Voting Rights Act, which was passed almost unanimously by the Congress, both sides of the aisle, back in 2006 and extended for 25 years. They just said, we don't like it. It's unconstitutional.
Well, Vance wants police forces to track women around the country for crossing state lines to have abortions. He's one of the ones who wants to monitor women's periods so he can track their pregnancy status. He doesn't want women to vote. I think you just mentioned that in the list. Women who are unmarried. He thinks women in general, I think, should not have the vote. I think he'd like to repeal the 19th Amendment.
There are right-wingers who say that.
But there's a wonderful video on X or Twitter or whatever by some people called the Marsh family who do parody songs online. And at first I thought they were just like, I looked at it, it was a hillbilly group, but no, they've dressed up as hillbillies.
Let's be careful of our phrasing.
I'm taking Vance's title, use of the word. They've dressed up in that mode to do a Vance parody song to
terrific.
The tune of Dancing Queen.
And we will link to it in our email, and you can sign up for our email by going to gayusatv.org, and there's a
It's really funny.
And we'll do it. Now, the other blockbuster news was Vance's ex-friend from his Yale Law School days, Sophia Nelson, transgender, who released emails and texts between the two from 2014 to 17. In the wake of the Michael Brown, I think this is the biggest one, in the wake of the Michael Brown killing by police in Ferguson, Missouri, Vance said he favored body cameras to put the cops back in the mindset of service and protection instead of coercion and control. I hate the police, he said. Given the number of negative experiences I've had in the last few years, I can't imagine what black guys go through. He's sort of lost this sympathy. He also expressed outrage, of course, over Trump's anti-Muslim rhetoric, which he now echoes.
Well, the shocking thing to me is not that he switched, but that Trump accepted him as having switched.
Yeah, well, she works as a public defender in Detroit and had this to say about J.D. Vance this week.
What I've seen is a chameleon, someone who is able to change their positions and their values depending on what will amass them political power and wealth. And I think that's really unfortunate because it reflects lack of integrity. This isn't someone who evolved on one or two issues and with new information. This is someone who has changed their opinion on literally every imaginable issue that affects everyday Americans in this country and changed the way they speak about people.
And Vance, and in one of the exchanges said, I think I'll go to the San Francisco Pride March. And he says, it felt more like a frat party than I expected, but still nice to see a lot of happy people.
I'm
And then, of course, now he
questioning-
calls Harris a San Francisco liberal. This is a guy who went to a Pride March, and I hope she socks it right back to him on that.
Would it be inappropriate of me to question his sexual orientation?
We don't have a picture of him ready to put up here, but he looks to me like he's into scare drag.
Well, I just think he gives off a little gaydar kind of vibe.
Well,
He protests too much.
he also argued that it was a mistake for women to leave violent marriages.
Yes.
He said this in 2021.
Yeah.
This isn't something he wrote when he was a high school student. He calls universal daycare class war against normal people. We've gone over the other.
Well,
things.
he voted against the Child Care Act, and I'm sure that's because he doesn't think women should be going out to work and leaving their kids in childcare. Right. He thinks they should stay home and take care of their kids, and therefore we should not subsidize childcare.
And now he's lying and saying that Kamala's against the child tax credit, but it's coming up for a vote. And is he going to be there to vote for it and get it? Because the Democrats are trying to expand it the way it was expanded during the pandemic, which did a tremendous amount to reduce poverty.
Yeah. So much for his line about the Democrats are against family.
Who was the Republican presidential nominee? Donald Trump.
I've heard of him.
Now into ending elections. Don't worry about voting, he says, because he's installed at least 70 pro-Trump conspirators as election officials in the battleground counties, poised to deny certification if he doesn't win.
Well, this all plays in with the Project 2025 stuff, and we'll get to that. But yes, lest you think the Republican Party is just fading away in despair and pessimism, they are installing Trump-supporting election officials all over the country who will cut back on voting availability and will disempower voters.
And when the results come in, if they don't like them, they will just say, we are not certifying them. And that's why he's making these insane statements.
Yep.
You're never going to need to vote again because we've got control of the mechanisms of the election.
Yes, and they'll take an urban county and say, oh, there are too many voting irregularities. Right. We're not accepting the votes from this county.
He is, of course, facing sentencing on the case of the New York case of fraud.
Yeah,
soon. I think it's about the 18th or something in September. But his lawyers are in court at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit on September 6th to try to reverse the judgments against him for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll and lying about it. You're drawing a lot of attention to that, Donald. I do have to say it's nice to see his nephew Fred Trump, 61, out there with a book on his uncle, ready to campaign for Kamala Harris.
Well, the timing is good. I would have expected that book to come out a long time ago, but I'll take it in this election season.
This is Mary's brother. He documented Donald's use of the N-word repeatedly. And when the biggest thing is when he asked Donald for help with his profoundly disabled son, Donald said, maybe those kinds of people should just die, given the shape they're in and all the expenses.
He doesn't recognize you. You should let him die and then just move to Florida.
I like you, Fred. I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
Just let him die.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's who people want as our president.
Take us to Project 2025.
Well, first, I want to just thank our current president, Biden, for putting out some very provocative and progressive ideas about reforming the Supreme Court.
Yes. He unveiled that plan, term limits for justices, binding code of conduct for justices, just like other judges, and ending immunity. He also wants a constitutional amendment that would end immunity for crimes a former president commits in office, overturning the worst SCOTUS decision since the one the previous week. They overturned Roe v. Wade. Now, it's not going to pass as a constitutional amendment. It requires 2/3 of both houses of Congress and 3/4 of the states. But if they would put these things to a popular vote, I'm sure that they would pass.
Well, these things get passed by starting somewhere and
Yes.
building support
And
for
by the
them.
way, Ted Cruz, who condemned Biden's proposals a couple of years ago, he was saying, I lean in favor of term limits for Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, well, now he's got the Supreme Court he wants, so he doesn't want term
Well,
limits.
Lambda Legal is applauding Biden's change of heart and has endorsed also court expansion, ethics reform, and ending the Senate filibuster, things that Congress can do.
Yeah. But yes, Project 2025. I have to say that the campaign to this year alone to alert the populace to Project 2025 is one of the most spectacular successes I have seen. It is everywhere. It has become common knowledge as a horrible thing. Kamala talks about it. Biden talks about it. Everybody talks about it.
They were even talking about it in Times Square this week. Big demonstration there by Rise and Resist and so many other groups. No dictators in the USA, right there by the military recruiting station in Times Square with the American flag.
And your faithful anchors, Ann and Andy, were there.
We were. That's my picture there. And so Jaron Benjamin, who was with the Center for Popular Democracy, we've known him for a long time, African-American leader, Black leader. He spoke at the thing, and he did a very brief summary of the thing in 1 minute.
We're already bleeding. Black folks are already bleeding. Members of the LGBT community, we're bleeding. All of us. And let me tell you something. Project 2025, it's almost 1,000 pages. You're not going to read through all of it, but I'm going to give you less than 20 big things that are about to happen that they want to eliminate. So one, end climate protections, increase Arctic drilling, eliminate public unions, disband the Department of Education, end free lunch at school, teach Christian beliefs in schools, ban books that talk about slavery, eliminate African American and gender studies, disband the Department of Homeland Security and replace them with a horseback mounted border patrol, begin mass deportation of immigrants and incarcerate them in quote unquote camps, defund NPR and PBS, raise prescription drug prices, raise the retirement age, raise taxes on the working class, reinstate the draft, eliminate public housing, use the military to break up protests. Now let me tell you something. Do not be deceived. They are coming for us. They're coming for our organizations. Some of the Republicans have already started doing that. Okay. So do not be deceived.
And the Fenway Health
Project
has put out going to do to
many
us.
people
It wants to erase us.
Many organizations have put out summaries of Project 2025. If you start Googling around on that, you will find a lot of brief summaries that will give you the highlights, lowlights of this. So the Republicans are so scared of this.
Trump says, shut it down.
Yeah, well, so the news bulletin this week was, all right, the guy in charge of it is leaving. He has left. We're shutting down the policy parts of this. Well, they've already written the policy parts of it. They don't need to do any more work on that. And you know where he's going? To the personnel part of it. He's not being fired. He's not leaving. He's now going to be in charge of the recruitment of 20,000 Trump loyalists to take the place of all the civil servants he's going to fire to run departments, to do all these things that are on the list. That is phase 2, or as they call it, pillar 2 of Project 2025. And they are going to train those people. That's pillar 3. They're going to take them all into training sessions for how to destroy the government and turn it into Christian nationalism. Right. And that is their plan. And then it's all about interfering with the voting, challenging all election results across the country that do not conform to what they want, they are relentless. It's my favorite word on this show, relentless and shameless. They are not giving up.
And I wish we were a lot more relentless with putting out what we're for. And that is a problem. We will have a platform at the Democratic Convention, but we need also a Project 2025.
Well, I like the Kamala theme of moving forward and freedom and moving forward. I think that's an excellent image to put out there. And sure, let's put more meat on those bones. But the Republicans are not going away. I have this image of Trump. I think he's really back on his heels, and he's like the Wicked Witch of the West, melting like brown
he's
sugar.
Still tied in the polls.
Oh, please. That's just a way station on the way to Kamala's triumph. But the polls may be having her win, but they will do so much election interference that it's going to be very hard to overcome. And we must be relentless on that front and make sure that we keep the election fair.
I heard Raphael Warnock, the senator from Georgia, being asked that question. What are you going to do down there? They're doing all this suppression. They have a Republican governor.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, we elected 2 Democratic senators, from the state. That was a couple of years ago. This is now.
Yeah. And they're more desperate now.
And what are they doing? And they're not saying what they're doing.
Well, Stacey Abrams spoke at that rally.
She's
too.
great. She's great. Now what is his name?
And Megan the Stallion.
Yes. Now, what is this? Is it Kevin Roberts, who's the head of the Heritage Foundation?
Yes.
So he wrote a book that's coming out, Dawn's Early Light, Taking Back Washington to Save America. Who wrote the foreword to it? It's just coming out. J.D. Vance. So they can't separate themselves.
And it had a more provocative title that they changed.
Yes, it used to be Burning Down Washington to Save America and had a match on it. But the Trump campaign is trying to run away from this kind of stuff. But we have nothing to do with it. We're not going to hire anybody in it.
They're changing the changing the overt PR, but all their work is still taking place underground. Watch out.
Okay. Let's watch what's going on in the U.S. Senate. They passed a bill called the Kids, unless you're not done with Trump.
Go ahead.
The Kids Online Safety Act. Who's not for that? At the behest of parents.
Me.
At the behest of parents who lost children to what they saw as harmful influences from social media platforms. Now, it passed 91-3 in the Senate.
Who are the 3? I want to know those heroes.
Well, Ron Wyden was one of them.
Yeah, but it's also
the only
right wingers. Right wingers are against it too,
2
because they're afraid that their speech will be censored.
Rick Santorum is being paid by these social media companies to lobby against it. So obviously the social media companies are against it, but so is the ACLU on First Amendment grounds and LGBTQ youth, especially who worry, they're getting a lot of they overcome isolation by using these platforms. And if you start putting all these filters on them and everything and say you can't do this, well, they're going to be in trouble. Something was formed called the coalition, the Fight for the Future, to lobby against this, but unsuccessful in the Senate. But we don't know what's going to happen in the House.
Well, the Republicans, I guess the Republicans could decide to defeat it.
Take that social media company money and go home.
Yeah.
By the way, the 988 National Suicide Prevention Lifeline that was set up in 2022 by a bipartisan Congress has received more than 10 million calls in the last 2 years, saving countless lives. And the Biden administration funneled $1.5 billion into it, and it includes special call options for LGBTQ youth. That's 988.
And also another little tiny piece of better news. The Southern Baptists had fired one of their leaders who came out and said that Biden did a good thing. He was selfless by getting himself off the ticket. And the Southern Baptists said, oh no, we don't want you saying things like that. You're out. Well, they have now reinstated him.
Yeah, it was the head of the Southern Baptists who got rid of him. And then the board said,
the far right people. Precipitous firing. So he's back in. I appreciate that.
Elon Musk fired his daughter. He has an estranged daughter, hitting back at his attacks on her. He had said in an interview, my son, he said, is dead, killed by the woke mind virus, and that he was tricked into authorizing gender-affirming care for her when she was 16. So Vivian Jenna Wilson, as she is now known, is hitting back, said that Musk was not tricked. She needed his consent. He needed consent from both parents, and says that she won't let his lies to millions slide. Said he was rarely present in her life, even though they had joint custody. He was cold, quick to anger, uncaring, and narcissistic.
Cruel.
Sound like anybody we know?
Yeah.
Harassing her for exhibiting feminine traits when she was in the 4th grade, for having too high a voice. She's now 20 and studying languages.
Her mother is supportive and has been an ally.
Yeah.
All right. Monsignor Jeffrey Burrill.
I'm going to let Ann do the Catholic story here. There he is. He was the, what was he once? The head of the...
He was with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops.
He was the general secretary of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops.
Well, he is suing Grindr because his information about his use of Grindr and his attendance at bathhouses became public.
Yes, and he resigned over it. He would have been fired.
Yeah. He's suing Grindr for selling his data.
Yeah, it was a right-wing media outlet that exposed him. But what's happened to him? He has returned to priestly duties in West Salem, Wisconsin, his then bishop saying he had engaged in sincere and prayerful efforts to strengthen his priestly vows. Now, how about a sincere effort to get the church to stop persecuting people like you, whose drive is for intimate love with people of the same sex? That would show some integrity, Monsignor Burrill.
And how about living a life of integrity where you're not hiding and then suing the company that sold your data and ended up outing you?
Yeah.
Not an appealing guy.
Okay.
And the Catholic Church, instead of supporting people like that, is getting back into financing anti-abortion campaigns everywhere.
Yes.
We have seen them spend a lot of money over the years on that, and also fighting same-sex marriage.
Your donations
laws
that you think are going to the poor and maybe to keep the walls up on your churches.
Nope.
All right. In Florida, the chief U.S. district judge there, Mark Walker, placed a permanent injunction against Ron DeSantis' Stop Woke Act, calling it positively dystopian, and that it violates a business's rights to free speech if they want to do DEI in their workplace. DeSantis will spend state money to appeal this to the U.S. Supreme Court.
He's furious.
He went on a 7-minute tirade about, I think he's being influenced by Musk, the woke mind virus. This is their phrase. And he was less concerned about the spread of COVID-19 virus, of course, that killed so many Floridians.
By the way, I made a comment last week, I think, about Musk being one of J.D. Vance's biggest supporters, but really Peter Thiel is who I should have been citing.
Sure, of course. Yeah. Peter Thiel, this gay guy who, owned or founded PayPal?
Yep.
Who has a fortune, has spent a lot of money on Trump and a lot of other things. He's a really awful person.
Mm-hmm.
But such, what's his name? Vance has all these gay and trans mentors.
Another clue in the life story. Also in Florida, at Monarch High School, we've been waiting for a decision on what happened to the teacher who was being charged with concealing the fact that her trans daughter was playing on a sports team there. And the school was going after her and wanted to fire her and fine her and whatever. And the school board has finally decided that she will serve a 10-day unpaid suspension. And the problem is that they're punishing her for being a parent supporting her child, not for anything she did officially at the school. She just was a parent supporting her child. And by the way, when the school heard that there was a trans kid on the sports team, the principal thought it was a trans male and kept expecting the trans girl to transition to being male rather than being a trans girl. It's very confusing. But the mother, I mean, she shouldn't be suffering any consequences, but at least it was moderate as opposed to something that could have been more drastic.
You have anything else, or should we move on to some of these crime stories?
I'm interested that James Essex and Chase Strangio are now going to be co-directors of the LGBTQ HIV project at the ACLU.
Yes.
That's a promotion for Chase.
Trans, yes.
Yep. Power sharing. Nice to see power sharing. Imagine that.
As we do here at Gay USA.
Oh, yes, of course.
All right. In Austin, Texas, 3 frat boys at the University of Texas were arrested for an April 21st attack on a gay man. We have a picture of him, Joshua Ibarra, as he walked to his Uber ride. Just one has been charged with a hate crime, the one who started it, but they all joined in, beating him and shouting anti-gay slurs until he blacked out. A friend, a woman, tried to shield him and she got beat up. Ibarra has still not been cleared to go back to work. And this is back on April 21st.
And in Seattle, Washington, trans woman Kenji Spurgeon, 23 years old, was shot dead. She was a dancer, makeup specialist, and was lauded for inspiring joy among everyone who knew her.
They had a candlelight vigil last Wednesday at the AIDS Memorial Pathway.
Details of the murder are somewhat unclear, but 23 years old. By the way, trans murder, well, the next one is in Florida.
Monique Brooks.
Yes, 49 shot dead.
July 19th. It was near the Florida Mall, now also known as Jade Monique Thomas. She was found alive, but died in the hospital. Her family says she was shot and killed in her car. She worked as a digital creator and hairstylist, active with Divas in Dialogue, a sisterhood for trans women of color, 28th trans woman whose death has been recorded this year in the United States.
And tons in Florida over the past few years.
Well, it's kind of a very hostile environment down there, isn't it?
It certainly is.
You know?
Yeah. And also in Florida, and at Miami Airport, a 29-year-old man attacked a trans girl, 17 years old, stabbed her 18 times. Both of them had been living at the airport. He's charged with attempted murder, tried to toss her over a 4th floor railing. She's alive, but, again, a young trans girl being attacked for no ostensible reason.
And these victims are being identified by the highest reaches of the Republican Party.
Yeah. In Nebraska, the Nebraska Supreme Court has upheld a ban on gender-affirming care, that law that was passed in the legislature, and a limit on abortion availability, one of these 12-week laws. Well, at least it isn't a 6-week law, but it's a 12-week law. And I don't know if that can or will be appealed, or maybe they'll come up with a way to vote on those things, but not a good decision from the Nebraska Supreme Court.
Right.
And in Missouri, a judge has blocked Biden's LGBTQ youth non-discrimination law in 6 surrounding states. That now means 21 states have blocked his, I guess, Title IX attempt to expand non-discrimination laws to include gender identity and sexual orientation.
But he's trying.
He is trying. And if we, that's why it's really, really important that we not only elect a Democratic president, but as many members of state and federal legislatures as possible, because we have to overcome these laws.
But of course, what we're up against is all the gerrymandering that's gone on for the last 20 years, which makes it almost impossible in some states.
Well,
but things can turn around someday.
Look, we've had great success in conservative states like Kentucky and Kansas and Ohio,
and turning around Michigan,
and in passing good laws for reproductive freedom. And I think if there is enough of a what's the word I want? The power of a lot of people going out and voting, we can overcome gerrymandering.
We shall overcome.
I hope so.
We'll move on.
And congratulations to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which has returned to having a pride parade after 12 years of being stymied by permit problems.
That's nuts. You should
12
always be, you
years.
should always be able to go to court and get your permit.
Well, I don't know all the details, but I know that they have revived the pride parade there.
All right.
Good for them.
Well, in Russia, they continue to crack down. The court there fined feminist activist Dina Nurm and her partner, Anastasia something,
Goncharenko.
$1,130 each, which is a lot of money over there, for propagating LGBT relations and posting online photos of themselves. What were they doing? Hugging, kissing, and touching each other.
And they were in Serbia.
The couple left Russia in March to go there in Serbia. LGBT propaganda has been banned in Russia since December of 2022 and in Florida's schools since 2022 as well.
And actually in Russia a lot longer than that. They started their
LGBT propaganda to minors. Now it's just anything with gay.
In Ghana, a court there has upheld the criminalization of homosexuality law. And they're working on an even worse law.
And in Senegal, where gay sex can get you 5 years in prison already, legislators are reviving a draconian anti-gay bill that failed to pass 2 years ago. It would increase sentences to 10 to 15 years for bisexuality, including homosexuality, transsexuality, necrophilia, and zoophilia, plus fines of $8,300, where the average monthly income is $87.
They come up with these lists, bestiality, necrophilia, homosexuality, and bisexuality. And then people vote for that because they want to ban necrophilia. And in the UK, the High Court there has upheld the government's ban on puberty blockers for all minors. Now, this is all based on this CAS report, which is getting more and more
But Labor is not standing up to that.
Well, they
the
need
new
to.
Labor government.
There was a great story this week about how one of the people running the CAS report project was this woman from, I think, the Netherlands, who is just virulently anti-trans and somehow ended up as one of the governing people on this, scientific report.
And Hillary Cass ended up in the House of Lords for her efforts.
All right. Are we ready for the Olympics?
Yes. So we've made much about how there are,
it was very gay.
So many athletes.
Ceremony.
Now it's up to, we said 144 last week. Now they're saying 191, 193, something like that. It's a record.
In 2000, there were 5 identified out LGBTQ athletes, just 24 years ago.
But the big news is that
they do have a pride house on a boat on the Seine.
There's equal representation of gender at the Olympics for the first time. And also of the LGBTQ people, it's 9-to-1 women.
Also, Grindr has disabled their location services because so many people could be in trouble if they're coming from countries that would criminalize them.
As they have in past Olympics.
Yeah.
So lots of drag at the opening ceremony.
Oh, more than drag. First, we have a throuple that showed up in the middle of the opening ceremonies. It was, I'm watching the opening ceremonies. I say, wait a minute, is that a threesome there? And yes, it is. 2 men and a woman, assuming their gender identities, just playing around with each other in the middle of the opening ceremonies, which was very gay because the artistic director of the ceremonies was the gay man Thomas Jolly that we have told you about before.
There he is before the ceremony. So there was a lot of drag in the opening thing. It was hard to miss.
Well, they did a sort of fashion show along this banquet table with drag performers and trans performers in the midst of this
next
slide,
please. Oh, no, so the next slide, of course, is the thing that has caused so much controversy.
Yep.
Or different variations of this picture. Christians like Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, attacked this as an attack on Christianity. I don't remember them being upset when Mel Brooks satirized the Last Supper in his movies. But anyway, that's what they thought. But
it's not the Last Supper.
Well, it's not. But I mean, first you had the mayor of Paris saying, "Oh, if we offended anybody, we're sorry." Yeah. But then Thomas Jolly says, "Oh, this is Dionysian. This is Olympic. This is Olympic."
It's the Greek origins of the Olympics. That's what I was referencing here. This is a whole pageant of history throughout the ages, and starting with the Dionysian image. There are too many people for the Last Supper. That's not what it is, but it was run in the middle there, the image, aside from Dionysius, painted in blue. There was Barbara Butch, who behind Dionysius in the sort of crown in the middle, who was the DJ, who is now getting death threats
and rape threats for
being part of this.
So I don't
Very
know.
Christian behavior.
It does make me wonder about Christianity if that's what it prompts you to do.
Oh well, we've wondered about that for years.
Our Lord used to say, "Love your enemies, do good to those who persecute you." I'm not making this up; it's in your Bible.
And then they had the torchbearers, which included Carl Lewis, who was the subject of gay rumors for years, and the out tennis player, Amélie Mauresmo, the French tennis players. I thought that was nice to have both ends of that, sort of the closeted and the out.
Carl Lewis never came out?
No.
All right, Carl. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, but it was the whole thing was very gay, and to pay it off, starting with Lady Gaga singing, and then Celine Dion on the platform at the Eiffel Tower was just magnificent.
Yes, it was
magnificent.
Exciting. It was
really,
exciting.
really.
I didn't like the thing with the boats in the river because it kind of removed. I want to see the athletes in motion marching into the stadium, but all right.
I get sick of that too. So,
okay.
But Marie Antoinette headless and sort of streamers of red and the hard rock
and the right wing
band.
posted an insult to the Bourbons.
Well, it was not entirely boring.
All right. So let's talk about the out athletes. Tom Daley of the United Kingdom, competing in his 5th Olympics at age 30.
That's him on the left.
Medaled for the 4th straight time, winning silver this time on the 10-meter synchro platform with partner Noah Williams.
Synchronized diving.
Daley won gold in Tokyo in 2021. Daley's husband, Dustin Lance Black, and their kids were in the stands cheering them on.
And pointed out by the broadcasters very overtly. And
we finally got to see what his kids look like, because when they post on Instagram, they never put the kids' faces on there. But there they were in the stadium.
Well, I was happy to have the broadcasters point them out. But on the other hand, I was not happy with the fact that we had to listen to NBC personnel as the commentators on all of this. Do I really need to see Peyton Manning and Kelly Clarkson as the hosts of the opening ceremonies? How about a few Olympians?
Anyway, in fencing, out Lauren Scruggs of the USA, there on the right in that picture, won the silver medal in women's individual foil. She competes at the college level for Harvard. And she's also the first Black woman to win in fencing.
And Amandine Bouchard from France won a bronze in judo.
Yep.
And the women's rugby sevens team won the bronze. It was a fantastic game where they won in the last seconds with a long run down the field. They have 6 out players on that team. And more on the New Zealand and Canada teams. What they're calling team, if you go to outsports.com, you can follow all this on a daily basis.
Yes.
But team LGBTQ, as they call it, is now in 12th place overall in medal accumulation.
Of all the teams.
Yes.
All right.
And Eurosports fired their announcer, Bob Ballard, an out gay man, after he, in calling the women's 4x100 meters Freestyle Swim said, well, the women are just finishing up. You know what women are like, hanging around, doing their makeup. Out of here, Bob.
Gotta go. AIDS
All right.
news?
Yes.
In the state of Georgia, in the United States, a telemed provider, Mr. M-I-S-T-R, is working with Walmart stores to offer free online STI testing, including HIV, PrEP, Doxy PrEP, and long-term HIV care, as well as free home HIV tests in 7 stores around the state, where there's now clusters of rapid HIV transmission there, particularly among Latin men who have sex with men. It's supposed to be no out-of-pocket costs, and they hope to expand it nationally.
I hope they do. The CDC is reporting its latest figures, 2022, thank you, new HIV infections rising, especially around Black and Latino men and trans women. New York City is reporting that Mpox cases are down. So that's good news. But the big news is really published in the New England Journal of Medicine, reported at the AIDS conference. Gilead testing a preventive twice-a-year vaccine.
Lenacapavir.
Yes, for PrEP prevention, tested against daily Truvada pill. No new infections with the injection. They tested on
100% effective.
5,300 young women in South Africa and Uganda. 0 new infections, 55 new infections with Truvada. The trial included pregnant women and teens. They're now conducting a second trial with cis and trans men, trans women, non-binary who have sex with men in Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Peru, South Africa,
and it
Thailand,
only costs $40,000 a year for 2 shots. That's $20,000 a shot. Now, they're trying to work with Gilead to get it down to $100.
And allow generic versions that will be even cheaper.
You would think.
You would.
But you
the
know,
concept is great.
The thing with the pills is you got to take them every day, and
Yes.
people don't.
Yeah.
And there is another injection system where you take it every couple of months, but this would just be 2 shots a year.
Yep.
Now, again, that's a drug that's already used to treat HIV in combination with other antiretrovirals.
Truvada.
No, I'm talking
The
about
injection?
the new. Yes, that drug is also used. Yes.
News to me.
Okay.
Entertainment news?
Yeah. Well, the out pop star, Chapel Roan, 26 years old, now has, as Ann informs me, 6 songs on the Hot 100. Her fans show up at her concerts in glittery pink cowboy hats in homage to her hit song, Pink Pony Club. She grew up in a very conservative religious environment in Missouri, now identifies as a lesbian, moved to LA, able to be herself at the Abbey, which was Elizabeth Taylor's favorite gay bar there.
Don't forget the Elizabeth Taylor documentary coming up this weekend on HBO.
And HBO Max. And she now has a fiercely loyal LGBTQ fan base.
But she's become so popular so suddenly that the venues that have been booked for her performances are turning out to be too small, and they're scrambling to get bigger places.
We need a bigger table.
Yes, that's another reference. All right. HBO's House of the Dragon, the kind of show I never watch.
I watched the last 5 minutes of it because we were going to be doing this today. But go ahead. No, I mean, it's just one of those, gothic kind of, dragon. A lot of dragons in it.
I never watched Game of Thrones.
Some of the dragons seem nice,
Yeah.
and some of them will eat you.
Well, not surprising, I guess. So they had a scene of 2 women kissing on House of the Dragon. Now, one thing that's interesting is it was unscripted. The 2 women were doing the scene. They were supposed to just stare at each other, but they ended up kissing because they were so compelled to do so. Well, this has set off a lot of complaints.
Yeah, from whom?
Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Oh.
Who are putting up a lot of 1-star reviews to try to kill the show.
Oh.
But congratulations to the women for giving in to their spontaneous impulse to kiss.
Now, and will remind me that this isn't news, but Oprah Winfrey and Gayle King, they went on Melinda Gates's interview show and spoke about their close relationship. And Oprah said, for years people used to say we were gay. And Gayle urged Oprah to do a show about it because it's hard enough to get a date on a Saturday night. Adding, if we were gay, we'd tell you.
They have been saying that on an annual basis for about 15 years.
They're very important people. So
I like their road trip. I could watch a rerun of their road trip across the United States. But who knows? Who knows what's going on?
You don't accept. Say it to their faces.
Do you think people tell the truth? Come on.
We do here on Gay USA. We do our best to tell the truth. That's one of the reasons we like doing this for so long.
Well, the truth I will tell is that someone did tell me a few years ago that they had information that the two of them were, in fact, a couple, but I have no evidence beyond that.
Then they're very good actors.
Yeah, I think they are very good actors, but that doesn't mean, so I'm not saying they are, because there was never any follow-up to that. Right. So I have no information beyond that one statement.
You didn't hold the candle. That's the old expression.
I know. I wasn't in the room is what he's saying.
All right. The Des Moines Metro Opera has premiered an opera about artist John Singer Sargent from the 19th century and into the 20th century, and the black male model in many of his works, Thomas Eugene McKellar. We have a picture, of the opera. It's called American Apollo by Damien Gettier, starring Justin Austin as McKellar and William Burden as Sargent, and it explores their romantic relationship. And while that is not completely documented, as with Gayle and Oprah, Sargent's homoeroticism in his art is there for all to see. I mean, his favorite painting was some homoerotic pose of a guy that he kept over his bed, for most of his life.
There's a lot of that in the history of art, those kinds of images and assumptions about artists who we're not talking about.
Well, this closed July 19th to good notices out there, but I assume it's going to have life in the future.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
All right. So do you have a vice presidential pick for Kamala?
Who would I want to see? Well, she's going to announce it momentarily.
Tuesday.
Right? Aren't we down to governors at this point? Isn't that?
Well, she put out a notice that said, please donate by Saturday, because if I pick a governor, you can't donate when there's a sitting governor on the ticket.
Well, I know she's not putting herself in the running, but I would like to see it. I would like to see Gretchen Whitmer and let them attack a woman ticket.
Well, as people say, we've had two men on the ticket for how many hundreds of years?
That's what Ruth Bader Ginsburg used to say about the Supreme Court. How many justices and women justices you think is enough? She said 9, because they've all been men before this.
Yeah. Well, I think that would be lovely, and I think it's not impossible, even though Whitmer has refused the crown. Refused the crown.
Do you have a favorite?
Well, I love Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. He's new to me, but I'm completely charmed by him.
Chris Matthews on MSNBC this morning.
Horrible.
I never heard of him. Who is he? I never heard of him. Chris, you're wake up.
Please. I thought we fired you, Chris Matthews. Didn't we get rid of you a few years ago? Why are you showing up again? It's really annoying.
With his bluster.
So I'd love Tim Walz, but I think all of them would be fine, more or less. None of them are perfect.
Nobody is.
Nobody
Not
is.
even us.
No. And thus we will go back to our homes and try to improve ourselves and come back and see you next week, at which point we will know who the vice presidential nominee for the Democrats is.
Bye-bye.
Stay tuned.